So Sony has shut down media reports PlayStation VR2 is selling poorly, with premature media predictions that PlayStation VR2 is doomed to failure being wildly exaggerated. And Sony claims sites like Digital Foundry and IGN game performance videos have a significant effect on where consumers decide to buy games, so we'll be delving into that a bit later into the video. And also, you really cannot make this ish up. But bizarrely, Sony has seemingly upset the Xbox community over a patent description. And in a bid to further win regulatory approval for its pending Activision Blizzard acquisition, Microsoft has signed its fifth 10-year partnership deal with the most unlikely of sources. All that and more after this. Welcome back to another Foxy Games UK news video. I hope you had a pleasant Easter bank holiday weekend. From the jump, if you're new here and like what I do, like, subscribe, hit notification, and follow Foxy Games UK via Twitter at FoxyGames_UK for more informative gaming news for gamers from gamers. So, our first news story in today's video, courtesy of InsiderGaming.com, Microsoft has signed a 10-year deal with EE to bring Activision games to its customers. In case you don't know who EE is a mobile operator, mobile cell phone operator, if you like, for our US friends. Popular in Europe, more so in the UK, I suppose, than the US, even though we have Kevin Bacon doing all the EU adverts over here, the EE adverts rather. So very Americanized advertising, commercials, but not so popular in America, bizarrely enough. Anyway, Phil Spencer has taken to Twitter to announce that Microsoft has signed yet another 10-year deal with another company to bring Activision Blizzard games to its customers. This time, Spencer announced the deal with EE. Spencer announced that Microsoft and EE are expanding our partnership with a 10-year commitment in cloud gaming to bring PC games built by Activision Blizzard following the acquisition, assuming it is approved. I'm thinking it may be at this point, an Xbox to EE customers. So all the games for EE Cloud on your cell phone. Now, we are committed to bring more games to more people, however they choose to play, except for PlayStation, of course. Here's a tweet from Phil Spencer. Microsoft and EE are expanding our partnership with a 10-year commitment in cloud gaming to bring PC games built by Activision Blizzard, and following the acquisition to Xbox as well as EE customers, we are committed to bring more games to more people, however they choose to play. Yeah, the announcement follows another 10-year deal that Microsoft has signed, including deals with Nintendo and Boosteroid, a company I've never heard of. I suspect many of you haven't either. At this point, Microsoft will sign anybody just to, show regulators that they are willing to play nice and share. Microsoft has also publicly stated that the company has offered Sony a 10-year deal too, but as of the time of this video recording, Sony has not yet agreed to terms, more still challenging, miserably, I would add. But the ongoing dispute between both companies has been widely publicized since Microsoft's proposed acquisition of Activision Blizzard King. Primarily, Sony argued that Call of Duty is the fundamental to its platform, and any poor versions or lack of on PlayStation platforms would be irrecoverable for Sony. Sony predicting its own doom and gloom there, all based on Call of Duty, I doubt. And first-party games, of course, whereas Microsoft argues it needs Activision Blizzard to compete with Sony because Microsoft have issues making its own high-quality games. Microsoft has even argued that the 10-year deal gives Sony enough time to build a Call of Duty competitor if needed. We all know the story by now. But this deal has been met with some concerns from all the governing bodies, but they seem to be more relaxing on it now, especially the CMA, the UK regulatory arm. So that's one less hurdle, I suppose, for Microsoft to climb. However, EE is now on board for 10 years with Microsoft and Xbox, and if the deal is approved, if the Activision Blizzard King deal acquisition is approved, EE customers everywhere, Kevin Bacon not included, you can play Xbox games and PC games. Sound off in the comments what you think of that news story. I'll be keen to read your opinions. Next news story, PlayStationLifestyle.net. Xbox fans are upset with Sony's patent application language. What's the problem? Is it in Japanese? Is it in, simplified Chinese? What's the problem? Well, the problem is Sony has been accused of disparaging Xbox and Nintendo consoles in PlayStation patent applications, although it doesn't name any console. Sony's patents refer to non-PlayStation home entertainment systems as inferior devices. So, is PlayStation really throwing shade at Xbox and Nintendo? Well, the language was first highlighted by Game Rant, who pointed out that Sony submits two versions of its patent applications. One version is in a PDF format, which is specifically used for legal purposes, and this version seems to omit text referring to other console manufacturers as quote-unquote inferior. So, for context, here's what Sony wrote. For example, an end-user device may be a personal computer, a home entertainment system, e.g. the Sony PlayStation 2 registered or Sony PlayStation 3 registered, or the Sony PlayStation 4 again registered, or a portable gaming device. All Sony's hardware, by the way, Sony PSP or Sony PlayStation Vita, or a home entertainment system of a different, albeit inferior, manufacturer. I love this talk. It's funny. Hilarious. It's hilarious. It's so unprofessional. It's hilarious. So, well, here's the thing. I've never written a patent application, but Florian Mueller of Foss Patents apparently has 30 plus years of analyzing patents and intellectual property, and Mueller has worked with Microsoft and Blizzard in the past, so yeah, make of that what you will. And Sony's locking horns with both over their proposed merger. Well, according to him, this is unheard of. In a lengthy article on his own blog, I would add, he has noted that Sony has been using this childish and unprofessional language in patents dating back to 2011. Mueller has then proceeded to share a list of patents containing this language from various years, noting separately on Twitter that even some PDFs used for legal purposes contain this sort of language. He also claims that his LinkedIn post of this topic has been linked by various industry professionals, including a senior Nintendo counsel, suggesting that they agree with him. Make of that what you will. So, there you have it. Xbox fans community up in uproar, no more so than this Mueller individual, who is horrified, I would say, by the language that Sony is using, calling other systems inferior despite not naming any of them, and despite this language going back to, before a lot of these current gen, last gen, the gen before systems even existed. Well, it's clear that Sony is throwing shade at its rivals, and they're in the entertainment business, they want to sell product. I don't know what the problem is here. Maybe perhaps one of you can tell me in the comment section. Is it childish? Who cares? Stick with PlayStationLifestyle.net for our third news story, because the PlayStation versus Xbox Series X game performance comparisons influence buyers, Sony claims. Who knew? Of course it does. I myself base my game purchases on a lot of the outcomes of the Digital Foundry videos. For instance, The Witcher 3 runs much better on the Xbox Series X, so that's where I bought it. I own a PS5, and certain games run better on, a lot of games run better on PS5, including certain launch titles and many after. It's all sort of becoming more parity now. But there was a stage where PlayStation 5 was just outperforming a lot of the Xbox Series games, and that's where I bought those games. Common sense. You want the best product for the money you spend on these not very cheap to buy video game hardware systems. The games aren't cheap either, unless you want to sign up to subscription, but that's another story. But Sony Interactive Entertainment has claimed that PlayStation versus Xbox Series X game performance comparisons are highly influential and can impact a buyer's purchase decision. Again, who knew? This argument was part of Sony's response to, of course, the UK regulator, Competitors and Markets Authority, yes, the CMA, in which it expressed its disappointment over the authority changing its stance to side with Microsoft. Sony has been arguing that should Microsoft acquire Activision Blizzard and its properties, it could really downgrade Call of Duty games, but the CMA says it has no incentive to do that. It further argues that there could be inferior versions of Call of Duty on PS5, lacking DualSense haptics and maybe network problems, network code errors that have been put in there, bugs that just come up and down, it doesn't look good for Sony, basically. Everyone's having a good time on Game Pass. They didn't have to buy Call of Duty, the next Call of Duty. It's on Game Pass, yeah, in this alternate world where Microsoft has won the acquisition merger. So all the Xbox gamers who are not paying $70 for the game have a relatively good experience, while Sony gamers pay $70 and the netcode is just whack. I think that's what Sony is alluding to here. And it's entirely possible that, how could you prove Microsoft is doing that maliciously? It's difficult to prove, and yet it could still occur. So I understand where Sony's coming from, and you say, but Microsoft's not that petty. Well, I didn't think Sony would be so petty in its patents, to be honest, calling all these other systems inferior when it didn't have to. Sony didn't even have to mention the other systems, to be honest. Just say rival platforms, but it said inferior. So they're all petty. But within a week of releasing Modern Warfare 2, Digital Foundry and leading analysts compared performance on PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X and S. Studies have shown that these types of comparisons are highly influential. The level of social conversations surrounding consoles and games is extremely high, particularly when PC gamers get involved, because no matter what your what your console of choice is, rather, it could be lock 60, could hit 120 frames per second, you'll still get crap from some PC gamers. Oh, you're not playing at 240 frames, 1,000 frames. Oh, I'm doing 24K graphics. Yeah. Okay. Meanwhile, they're playing on 1080p and at tops 1440p, even the 4090. The 4090 struggles with the latest update for Cyberpunk. That amazing ray tracing. I saw Digital Foundry 18 frames per second, so there's no hope in hell of that game running with that type of graphic upgrade on these consoles. I tell you that, if that's doing 18 frames a second, 18, then look at you, 0.8 frames per second on consoles for sure. So Sony added that Call of Duty can't be compared to Minecraft. We've already done this, haven't we? I'm not going to repeat that. Yeah, blocky graphics can't compare to Call of Duty. However, CMA will make its final decision, as I've already mentioned in countless videos, later this month. Moving on. That was a bit of a non-story, wasn't it? Yeah, we've got to fill the video somehow. So moving on, our final news story, and that is the PlayStation VR2 launch sales may be outpacing the original PlayStation VR1 headset, in spite of the media pronouncing doom and gloom for Sony's latest VR handheld. So Sony's PlayStation VR2 may not be attracting mainstream gamers en masse, but the new headset is actually selling at a more rapid pace than its predecessor. This story comes by way of Tweaktown. I just love saying that. Tweaktown.com. Sony's PlayStation VR2 headset has sold an estimated 300,000 units, which isn't terrible performance when compared to the original PlayStation VR1 headset. Now, reports indicated that Sony's PlayStation VR2 is failing to gain traction in the gaming market, according to an IDC analyst. Figures which are reported by Bloomberg's Takashi Mochizuki. Now, the PlayStation VR2 has sold around 300,000 units, as I say, in its first month on the market. Video game outlets have responded to the news with reports that the PlayStation VR2 is selling poorly, leading to doom and gloom coverage of the VR market. Well, IDC analyst Francisco Geronimo, what a great name, even went so far to say that Sony may need to cut prices to avoid a total disaster. However, data released by Sony appears to indicate otherwise. Taking a quick look at Sony's PlayStation VR sales, you can see the original PlayStation VR1 sold around 915,000 units in its first 5 months since it launched, which was between October 2016 and February 2017. So, under 1 million units there. Now, the PlayStation VR2, however, managed to sell 300,000 units in just its first month availability. That's a single month that the PlayStation VR2 has already sold 1/3 of the PSVR's 5-month unit sales. This is also significant considering the PS4's install base had significantly outpaced PlayStation 5's install base. PlayStation file. This also is significant considering the PS4's installed base has significantly outpaced the PlayStation 5's installed base when each of the VR headsets had launched, no least to the chip shortages, and that the PlayStation VR2 is more expensive with a $550 price tag, which kind of makes sense, but we can't get a complete comparison because it's hard to know exactly how many units the PlayStation VR1 sold in its first month on the market, though we can get a rough estimation of attach rates based on the headset unit sales weighted against the appropriate selling figures that have been provided by Sony. If the PlayStation VR2 sold 300,000 units and Sony sold at least 32.1 million PlayStation 5 consoles, then the headset's attach rate is around 0.9%, less than 1%. Now the attachment rate is likely lower because the PS5 figures are based on data as of holiday 2022 and does not include the PS5 sold in January to March 2023 period that coincides with the PlayStation VR2's launch. So what about the original PlayStation VR1? What kind of attach rate did it have in a similar period? We can't determine that exactly because the PlayStation VR1 sales figures that Sony had released included the first 5 months of sales, not the first month. That was from October 2016 to February 2017 following year. Sony had confirmed the PlayStation VR1 had sold around 915,000 units worldwide around that time. Based on the above data though, we can determine an attach rate for PlayStation VR1 for this period. And this data shows that Sony had sold a total of 57.3 million PS4s through Q3 financial year 16, which coincides with the PlayStation VR1's October 2016 launch. Therefore, the PlayStation VR1 would have an attach rate of 0.15% after 5 months of sales. So PlayStation VR2 is almost at 0.1% attach rate for a month of sales. Granted, the PS5 install base is a lot less than the PS4's install base during the original head units release, but the PlayStation VR2's rate of sales isn't terrible when compared to its predecessor, which is the point, I guess. Though it's still going to be a hard sell for PlayStation VR2, regardless of this article. It's just nice to know that it isn't doing worse than PlayStation VR1 at this point, or at least in its first month of sales. And given that the figures are for prior to PlayStation VR2 launching, because they are the holiday figures for the PlayStation 5, I'd expect an update on that pretty sharpish within a month or so, and then we'll get a better indication of how PlayStation VR2 is doing. Well, that's your news for today. Though what say you? Let's continue the discussion cordially in the comments, as that brings us to the end of the video. Just like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, comment on videos, and you can help Foxy Games UK reach more gamers, so feel free to share the video. You may also wish to consider supporting Foxy Games UK via Patreon because, well, we're like family now. So link in the description, but that concludes our time together on this Tuesday. Until next time, play games, not corporations.